Hello, English 285. It's me, Pete. I'm your teacher. I'm here with the video. Hey, I hope everybody's doing okay. First of all, I want to apologize that this video is so late. The video was supposed to be up on Wednesday. Today is obviously Friday. Your assignment would normally be due the following Wednesday from when I posted the video. Instead, we're going to make the assignment due a week from today, okay? Next Friday, this assignment will be due, and we will take it from there. So because I'm a little late, we're going to give you a couple more days. What y'all going to be writing next is a sonnet. And obviously, sonnets are a really famous poetic form, right? Shakespeare wrote sonnets, which is, I suppose, what most of us are familiar with, or sort of familiar with. And again, probably the most popular poetic form that there is. And so y'all are going to be doing that. Now, writing in a form like what we're going to do here with the sonnet is, in my mind, sort of a double-edged sword, right? The one cool thing is that because you're doing things like having to make a certain rhyme and having to get the right number of syllables per line, and then you've only got 14 lines to begin with, when you have all these constrictions, it forces you to write things that you wouldn't normally write. So you end up doing something inventive or interesting because it pushes you beyond what you would normally do. The downside of that is that sometimes you write stuff that you shouldn't write because you're just trying to fill out the form, right? So the good thing is that it can cause you to do something cool. The bad thing is that it can, um, be ultimately detrimental. So, because right, you know how this goes, where people start throwing in like, "Oh, I love you," just to get the "O" in there so that they have an extra syllable, etc. So, let's talk about the sonnet form, and hopefully all of this will make more sense. So, sonnets got a couple of rules to them, and I'm going to show you here. I wrote these rules down. But right, so sonnets, first of all, 14 lines long, right? 14 lines long, that's important. So that's one rule of the sonnet, right? Another rule of the sonnet, and by the way, we're talking about a Shakespearean sonnet. There are other kinds of sonnets, but we're not going to concern ourselves with that. We're just going to stick with the Shakespearean sonnet. So, at any rate, but all sonnets are 14 lines, more or less, right? In our case, they're definitely going to be. Okay, so 14 lines long. Each line has 10 syllables in it. This is what we call iambic pentameter. Iambic means an iamb is an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. So that's 2 syllables total for an iamb. And then iambic pentameter, the pent, right? It's like 5. So you have 5 iambs, which that creates a grand total of 10 syllables. Does this make sense? We're not going to worry ourselves with iambs and stressed and unstressed syllables, okay? That's a very tricky stuff that we are not going to get into. But what we are going to say for ourselves is that each line is going to have 10 syllables. Okay, so I wrote down the first line from the Shakespeare poem we're going to be looking at. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. 10 syllables, okay? So here's the second rule that we're going to follow. We're going to have 10 syllables per line. Going 14 lines total. The next thing is a rhyme scheme. I'm going to give you some leeway on the rhyme scheme, but here is the traditional rhyme scheme that Shakespeare used. It goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G. If you don't know how to write out rhyme schemes, the A's obviously rhyme, the B's rhyme, the C's rhyme, the D's rhyme, etc. And then at the very end, you have what we call the couplet, right? Which is two G's right at the end that rhyme together. And it helps bring the poem to a close and all of that. So we got 14 lines, we got 10 syllables per line. We got this rhyme scheme, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G. And then there is one more thing that we're going to talk about in terms of the sonnet, and that is what we call the turn. The turn is the part of the poem where usually Shakespeare, it's going to be like the first 8 lines, he's going to say, oh my God, this is my problem. And then starting on the 9th line, he's going to say, but, and he's going to give us some sort of solution to the problem or some sort of way out of the problem. Sometimes he holds on to that solution till the very last 2 lines. So he'll write the first 12 lines with the problem and then give the solution in the last 2 lines. It's either between the 8th and the 9th line or between the 12th and the 13th line. Okay? At those times, one or the other, Shakespeare is going to switch directions. Okay? So we're going to call it the turn. So, for instance, we're going to look at this poem, My Mistress' Eyes Are Nothing Like the Sun, which I will link down here below. So pull that up, check that out. And let's just look at this real quick so we know what we're looking at, right? First of all, notice if you look down the right side margin, notice the rhyme scheme. Sun with done, red and head, white, delight, reeks and cheeks, know and go, sound and ground, and then rare and compare. So, right, so there's our rhyme scheme. Notice that each line is 10 syllables long. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. Right? 10 syllables per line. So we see that. There's 14 of them total. And we're going to see, if you look all the way down at the 13th line here, you see it begins and yet. Again, this is going to be the turn at the very end. Oftentimes that and yet is up at the 9th line. But here we've got it down at the bottom. So I'm going to read through this real quick. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfume is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with faults compare. Okay, so quickly going through this. He starts out like, listen, my mistress, her eyes are not like the sun. This is kind of just the opposite of what Marvel does and To His Coy Mistress, where he tells all these lies about, oh, I would praise your eyes for 100 years and all of this stuff. Shakespeare's doing something different here. He says, listen, my mistress, her eyes aren't like the sun. So I'm not going to say her eyes are like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips. Her lips are not like perfectly red. If snow is white, why then she's a little off-white. This is a time period where being as white as possible would have been seen as an attractive feature. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked, which in this case means like a rose that has like a spot on it, right? So, like it might be a red rose, but it has a little white spot on it, or a white rose with a little red spot on it, or something like that. So here, I have seen roses that have a little spot on them, but no such roses see I in her cheeks, right? So it's not like her cheeks are just, ooh, perfectly red, beautiful, standing out things. And in some perfume is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. So perfume smells better than her breath. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music. So her voice is like a regular voice. It does not sound like music. It just sounds like a voice. And then he says, I never saw a goddess walk, but I do know that when my mistress walks, she's walking on the ground. She's a regular person. So he set up this whole little thing that like, listen, my woman is not beautiful in the sense that maybe the conventional sense, or not, I'm not going to exaggerate her features. And then at the end, he says, but, and yet, by heaven, I think my love is rare, which rare here, I think, means means both unusual and like good, right? I think my love is rare as any she belied with faults compare. And so the word belied here is kind of an interesting word. Like if I lie to you, I tell you something that's not true. But if I belied you, I sort of make a liar out of you. So, right, at the end, I think he's saying, listen, she's not this perfect thing, this overly perfect, unrealistic thing. Still, she is beautiful. She is perfect for me. And she makes a fool out of the people that try to exaggerate her beauty or something. Okay, pretty straightforward poem in a lot of ways. We see how the sonnet works. Go back. And we are going to look at this poem by E. E. Cummings next to, of course, God, America, I. Another sonnet. Want you to look at this. The link that I gave you has these weird highlights on it. Don't worry about that. If you count this poem up, you're going to see 14 lines. If you count the syllables, you're going to see next to, of course, God, America, I. 10 syllables per line. He might have one or two that's 11 or 9, but it's 10 syllables per line. And notice, let's do the rhyme scheme. I, so that gets an A. O gets a B. My gets an A, and go gets a B. So far the same thing. Worry, dumb, gory, gum. So again, A, B, C, D, C, D. And then here, butte, which gets an E. Dead, which gets an F. Slaughter, which gets a G. Stead goes back to dead, gets an F. Mute goes back to butte, and gets the E. And water and slaughter go together. You see how he's changed that rhyme scheme? And notice, too, that he changes that between the 8th and the 9th line. Okay, so he's not going to do a turn in the traditional sense, but usually he's going to respect some idea about that the poem has sort of two parts to it. But anyway, that's not as important as some other stuff here. So 10 syllables per line. Notice the rhyme scheme. When you're making your sonnet, I'm going to let you mess around with the rhyme scheme. You still got to have 10 syllables per line. You still got to have a rhyme scheme, but you can do whatever rhyme scheme you want. Still got to be 14 lines. I'm going to read this real quick and then we'll talk about it. Next to, of course, God, America, I love you, land of the pilgrims, and so forth. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early, my country, 'tis of centuries come and go and are no more. What of it should we worry in every language, even deaf and dumb? Thy sons acclaim your glorious name by gory, by jingo, by gee, by gosh, by gum. Why talk of beauty? What could be more beautiful than these heroic, happy dead who rushed like lions to the roaring slaughter? They did not stop to think, they died instead. Then shall the voice of liberty be mute? He spoke and drank rapidly a glass of water. Okay, people. So, right, we've got the first 13 lines here are all in quotations, and at the end, we got the idea. So, this guy who's speaking, when he gets done speaking, he quickly drinks his water, right, like I'm going to do right now. He's like, oh. And what's he saying in this poem? All this is in quotation marks. What's he saying? Well, he's not saying much. I think that he's slamming together a bunch of cliches about America, about the United States that we have, some coming from song lyrics, some coming from just things that we've said over time. And he's slamming, he's not like getting any of those things all the way done. He's just doing a little bit of one into a little bit of another. And when he's all said and done, he hasn't said anything, though he has tried to be, I want to say, very patriotic and say the right stuff, right? But, this is like watching people on news, like talking head people or even political candidates from time to time who talk and talk and talk and they get done and you still don't even know what they've said. And this is what's going on here. Notice how he begins next to, of course, God. America, I love you. Like he's going to say, America, I love you. But he's got to first say, next to, of course, God, America, I. Because, right, in America, when you do anything, you have to first thank and acknowledge God, right? If you win a Grammy, you say, thank you for helping me. I want to thank God for helping me make this record about bitches and hoes. Thank you very much, God. Right? You got to do God first. And then America, I love you, land of the pilgrims, and so forth, genocide, but let's just say so forth. And you can see by the dawn's early, my country, 'tis of centuries come and go and are no more. What of it should we worry? In every language, even deaf and dumb, thy sons acclaim your glorious name, right? Like even people who can't speak or hear, they say how great America is. Y'all grew up in a slightly different time than me in the sense that you grew up post 9/11. But when I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, I was certainly taught that everybody around the world wanted to come to America, that they all envied us, that they all wanted to be here, all around the world. I think, again, you grow up post 9/11, you recognize, well, that's not how everyone feels. So, still, right? We tend to think of our country as like a great country or the great country, and that the rest of the world is clamoring to be here. And how do we acclaim the glory of America? We do it by gory stuff. We do it with jingos, which are like, little political slogans or something, love it or leave it or who knows what. We do it by whoops, gee, I didn't mean to do that, right? Why talk of beauty? What could be more beautiful than these heroic happy dead? And he's talking about the soldiers who rush into this slaughter, and they don't think about them dying, they just do it. And he's saying that's beautiful. And then he's got, so when it's all said and done, he said nothing. I think the last line is sort of communicating the idea that, right, like he's nervous or he's out of breath. I'm not sure what, but I love this poem, right? Sort of going after, I want to say, false patriotism or, people who, what? Don't approach these things thoughtfully, but instead sort of tend to use a bunch of cliches and etc. So, anyway, right? You get Shakespeare's sonnets are almost all about love. They're most all love, and sonnets tend to be love poems. And someone like E. Cummings actually writes a lot of love poem sonnets, but he expands. I mean, there are other things to write sonnets about, and other people have, but he's one of those people who did that, right? He spends a lot of time writing about war. He fought in World War I. And about right conformity and like how it is that people just sort of do what other people do, and he's obviously against that, right? He wants everyone to think for themselves, and here he's making some fun of somebody who doesn't think for themselves. Okay, and then quickly, won't go through this next one too long, but the Cambridge ladies who live in furnished souls, again, another Cummings one. Here again, I want you to do the rhyme scheme with me, right? Souls gets A, minds gets B, blessings, I'm going to say gets C, spirited gets D, dead is spirited, so it gets a D, things goes back to blessings, it gets a C, finds go back to minds, it gets a B, and poles goes back to souls and gets an A. So you see what he's done there. Let's see what he does at the end. So then bandy is going to get an E, and then D, so that rhymes with bandy, so let's just say that's E. Above is going to get G, of is going to get G, and then the, and candy again, so maybe E. I do think it's possible, too, you could write out that rhyme scheme, and you could say it goes E, F, G, G, F, E. It just depends on to what degree you want to count the D, and, I don't know. Doesn't matter. The point is, you see what he's doing with the rhyme scheme, he's messing with it. You, too, can mess with it. And just quickly reading through this again, 10 syllables per line, rhyme scheme 14. lines. The Cambridge ladies who live in furnished souls are unbeautiful and have comfortable minds, and with the church's Protestant blessings, daughters unscented, shapeless, spirited, they believe in Christ and Longfellow, both dead, are invariably interested in so many things. At the present writing, one still finds delighted fingers knitting for the, is it poles? Perhaps, while permanent faces coyly bandy scandal of Mrs. N and Professor D. The Cambridge ladies do not care above Cambridge if sometimes in its box of sky lavender and cornerless the moon rattles like a fragment of angry candy. You gotta love the end of this poem, like a fragment of angry candy. Love to think of the moon like that. So quickly, just going through this. Cummings from the Northeast, right? Cambridge, we have sort of old money. People have been around for a while. So when we say Cambridge ladies, I think we're talking about sort of proper women. Again, maybe from money, from tradition. The Cambridge ladies who live in furnished souls, and their souls are furnished, and you can interpret that any way you like. I think of it like an apartment that's already furnished, like their soul's generic. It's got God, it's got patriotism, it's got friends or whatever, but it's all the same as everybody else's soul. And they are unbeautiful, which is to say they're not ugly, but they're not beautiful either, right? They have comfortable minds, which is bad. You don't want a comfortable mind. This is why you're in college. This is why you learn stuff, because it makes your mind uncomfortable. And in doing so, you change your opinion because you've learned new information. So you don't want a comfortable mind. Also, with the church's Protestant blessings, daughters, unscented, shapeless, spirited. So they also, with the church's blessing, they have daughters. And their daughters are unscented, like they're not perfumed. They're shapeless, like maybe they're still young, that they haven't gone through puberty yet. And they're spirited, which in my mind makes it seem like, the life hasn't been beaten out of them yet, right? Like it'll get there, like school and parents and all that stuff will eventually crush their spirit. But for now, they're still spirited. Cambridge ladies, they believe in Christ and Longfellow, and Longfellow's from up in Cambridge. So this is like us believing in, Christ and David Letterman or the local hero, something, right? Both dead, as he sees it, right? Are invariably interested in so many things. So there's like, oh my God, I'm just so interested. At the present writing, one still finds delighted fingers knitting for the is it poles? And I think here with the capitalization of poles, which you've probably already noticed that E. Cummings normally does not capitalize, so when he does, I think that we need to pay attention to it most of the time. But anyway, Poles here makes me think of the Polish people. So they're interested in lots of things. Like right now, they're making knitting things for the Polish people. Or is it the Polish people? Maybe it's the Albanian people. Maybe it's the Serbians. Maybe it's Romanian. They don't know. They're just knitting. And why are they actually there knitting? Well, I guess they want to help people, but they don't really care. Really what they're doing is gossiping. They're sitting there. They got their permanent faces, which I think of as makeup, but also I think of the permanent face of a smile, like everything's okay all the time. How are you? I'm fine. I broke my leg. It's okay, right? They always be smiling, and meanwhile, they're gossiping. They don't care if sometimes you look up in the sky and the moon is rattling like a piece of candy. That doesn't bother them. I just want to say, if I look out my window and I see the moon shaking in the sky, that bothers me. I'm turning on the news. I'm checking out what's going on, because what goes on in the universe matters to me, not just what goes on in Cambridge, right? Like the moon, it matters. I don't know why, but it seems like it matters, right? So at any rate, you see here he's again sort of satirizing conformity or something along those lines. Okay, people, do you see the rules for the sonnet? 14 lines, 10 syllables per line, rhyme scheme, and some sort of turn in the poem. Again, you'll notice with E. Cummings sonnets that while he doesn't thematically take a turn in the poem, he does respect the idea that there is a break between the top and the bottom of the poem by changing the rhyme scheme at the traditional places, 8 and 9, right? Right in there between lines 8 and 9. Anyway, 10 syllables for okay. Y'all gonna write a sonnet. Got to follow these rules. 10 syllables per line. Got to have a rhyme scheme. Got to do the 14 lines, okay? It's not going to be due till next Friday, so you got a little bit of time to work on that. Again, I apologize for this coming so late, but I hope that this will help you get this assignment done. If you have questions or problems with this or anything else, people, I hope you will let me know. I want to help you out the best I can, for me to do that, I need you to let me know if you got questions or problems, and I will do my best. Okay, everyone? I hope everyone has a great day, and I will plan on seeing you later. Stay safe. Bye-bye.